swimming in these clothes. It's just kind of interesting to see that. And of course, they wanted to be very friendly and everything. And ass American guys, some of them would teach them the wrong thing, so they'd be very friendly. Hey, fuck you, fuck you. And somebody, that was the only American word they knew. You know, the English word. It's like, oh, great. Somebody's a great way to make friends, you know.
I just want to ask, like, what was your most, like, powerful memory of Vietnam? Like, is there, like, something that stuck out to you the most while you were there?
One of the things, well, a couple of things, but one that I thought showed how young I was, I guess, at the time was, I remember we were for about, there's a big island off of the coast of North Vietnam called Hai Nan, and we'd go just south of that off the coast, and beautiful, just absolutely beautiful, kind of just green, unbelievably green, and their coast goes to mountains, just right up to the big mountains in that part, very steep, very jungly. And for about 3 days, we'd been up on station there in that area, and there was a small village right on the coast, a little fishing village. Well, it wasn't very, probably 100 people at the most. Unfortunately, they had a AAA site right above them on the top of the mountain. And every time our planes would come off the carriers, they'd fly through that route. Of course, they're going low and fast. But these guys on the AAA sites would shoot at them every time, and they were terrible. They didn't come close for a long time. I remember it was 4th of July. It was the 4th of July, and I was really feeling down because I grew up as a kid, which I was still a kid there. But 4th of July was a big deal for me. We'd shoot fireworks and all that kind of stuff. I missed the firecrackers. I got all kinds of guns on the ship. But I remember feeling bad about that, and then that morning we were briefed and went back to that same station, and one of the guys in the AAA site got lucky, and they put a hole in the aircraft of TAG commander, one of the guys who commands one of the air groups off of a carrier. It was a bad idea because that morning we're in station. Instead of the planes going across the mountains and going into the bomb of North Vietnam, that little village and that AAA site was the target. So we were right close to the beach. I'm close enough to see people on the beach, you know. And they came in, and the people were expecting they'd fly over and they were going to take some shots and everything. This time they dropped all their bombs in this little village. And the top of this mountain where the AAA site was just obliterated instantly. But then it took about 5 minutes, and they did about 6 passes, and the whole village, the whole area, and the forest behind them just disappeared. And if you see a 500-pound bomb hit the ground from up close, it's terrifying. I mean, the whole earth jumps up and down 4 or 5 feet, you know, and the trees just go off to the sides, just disappear. The whole village, everybody just, there was nothing left, just absolutely nothing. It was like, man, it was more 4th of July than I wanted to see. Yeah, I remember that because I thought the little sleepy little fishing village and just disappeared.
Wow. Well, how hard was it, like, knowing that, like so many people were getting killed? Like, did it affect you?
You know, I was happy that I wasn't the guy dropping the bombs. Inadvertently, everybody that went there is part of the whole thing, from the guy who makes the lunch for everybody, you know, to the guy who actually pickles off the bombs out of there. And everybody's involved, so everybody's responsible for it. That was not a good thing. That was, I did my best not necessarily to think about that, but worked and trying to get home. There were so many conflicting feelings about that, because I really held a lot of resentment for the way the North Vietnamese had treated the South Vietnamese. I mean, it was just unbelievable, and it was very, very much downplayed in the American media at the time. I didn't feel as bad about being part of the war effort near the end when I saw some American sympathizers being over there. One, Jane Fonda, went over with one of our congressmen, Ramsey Clark, and the Stars and Stripes shows a picture of these guys in a AAA site, the same people that are trying to kill us, and there's 2 Americans in there, in their AAA site. Talk about fraternizing with the enemy. I didn't feel as bad about it after that when I realized that the whole thing had been so screwed up. You can't fight wars in that kind of a political way without paying a terrible toll on the young men and women who go. So I stopped feeling a little bit bad when I saw that occur.
So, I have kind of a follow-up question for that. A lot of times we've watched videos in class where soldiers have talked about morale during the war
Mm-hmm.
and how, like, it was terrible, like, people were really down and, like, they felt like the war had no purpose, and I was just wondering how you felt about that.
I think the average person over there mostly was just homesick and wanted to go home. A few of them, I met people who liked it, but for the majority of people wanted to go home. And when you're homesick, you look for any reason to complain and want to go home. I think that as far as resentment goes, the people that I know who really put some thinking into it came to the same conclusion I did. We didn't need to drag it out that long. It was drug out because the politicians drug it out at the cost of American human lives, is what it amounted to. Because had we really at any time decided we were going to end this thing, we would have done what we did at the very end of the war. We would have taken the fight to where it was coming from, and we would have went to the north. I mean, and wasn't in for killing people, but if you went in with the might that we did have and directed where we needed to direct it, the war would have been over so quick, and we would not have lost that many people.
Going back to how you were talking about the North Vietnamese treatment to the South Vietnamese, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. In South Vietnam, especially down near the Mekong region, the southern portion of Vietnam, there weren't very many big cities. There's a few big cities, but most of them were small hamlets, small little places. The North Vietnamese would go in and try to turn the civilian population against the Americans, and how they would do it was tell them, if you do anything to help the Americans or you don't help us at night by carrying our equipment and feeding us, we're going to come back and we'll kill you. And they would. They would kill whole villages or go into a village and kill their children. I mean, I don't care what your cause is, what you're fighting for. To do that randomly to the civilian population is not right. It just isn't. We didn't do it. We went to great lengths not to hurt the general. Although the American press made it out like we were out there just killing indiscriminately. That couldn't possibly be farther from the truth. All the missions that I was personally involved in, some of them were almost laughable. We'd be dropping $1,000 bombs on $10 bridges, little bam. I mean, it was just ridiculous. We wasted so much of our time on hitting unimportant things.
You mentioned how you were frustrated with how long you were there. Do you feel that the guerrilla warfare of the Vietnamese added to that frustration?
No, you don't have to get rid of the guerrilla war fighters down in South Vietnam if they are all being supplied from North Vietnam. Instead of trying to hunt people out in the jungles, you go to the big cities where all the war effort's being made up north. Had we gone up there and just bombed the crap out of all their cities and all their industrial might, that would have been the end of it. We did effectively stop the Chinese from being very helpful, because in most of the war, they would go and just take their ships freely into North Vietnam, into Haiphong Harbor and the other harbors, and drop off war supplies. When we said, okay, that's enough, nobody's trying to negotiate an end to this war, we mined all the harbors. We completely kept them out of there, and all small destroyers were cruising up and down. There's no way the Chinese could help them then. We were trying to stop the war effort that way. It got desperate to them to the point where the Chinese would lash huge bales of rice together, tons of it, and they'd drop it off at night off the coast and hope that the tides would float it into the beach, and then the Vietnamese would pick it up and they could supply that way. One of the things I didn't mind at all doing is when we were flying around during the day waiting for the planes to finish, we saw these gigantic things of rice floating around. It was target practice for me. We'd come through with machine guns and just blow the crap out of those. And you could watch the fish eat them as the rice would go down through the bottoms. War's a terrible thing, but why drag it out? Why drag it out? The whole idea was we were bombing the wrong places till the very, very end of the war. And that could have gone on forever, and it would have if we hadn't started bombing the north.
Moving on to like post-war. Was it hard to transition from Vietnam back to home, like mentally? Like, were you like changed at all?
It wasn't for me at all. Well, I would hope I was just a little more mature, but as far as bad dreams, the only bad dreams I ever had about Vietnam was the stinky old dead bodies in the water. I was part of my